Hi, everybody. This is our channel, our Scientology Stories Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and my co-host is...
Janis, Gillham, Grady. Good day, everybody. I'm about to lose
Good
my
day,
earpiece.
Janis. Yeah, how are you doing? How's it going today?
It's going good. Dogs are fast asleep on the couch next to me, guarding over me. It's a little cold outside, so I'm wearing a sweater, and it's very appropriate because today we're going to be talking about the Freewinds. And I thought, yeah. And this is a sweater I got during the maiden voyage. You can see right there, maiden voyage, Freewinds, 1988.
Yeah.
So I thought this was very appropriate to wear today. Well, and since you're in Hawaii, I'm wearing.
Well, I was a guest on the Freewinds maiden voyage, so I'm wearing my Hawaiian shirt from back then. No, I'm just teasing. I was not there.
No, you've never been to the Freewinds, have you?
I've never been to the ship. Yeah, this is the Scientology ship, the Freewinds, that we're talking about. Go ahead, Janis.
Right. And, you know, my husband, Paul, was the one who ran all the missions, and he never got to go to the Freewinds either. But today we're going to have a special guest who, speaking of Paul, when Paul was dying, I called this friend of mine because I wish everybody had a friend like him. I called him, and he was in California. He got in his car right away, drove to Las Vegas, and was by my side the whole time for the end of Paul's life. And I appreciated that so much. And he's got a special place in my heart. And I want to welcome Scott Campbell.
Hi, Scott. How you doing?
Hello.
Hi, Scott.
Hi, Mark. Hey, look, I wore my Hawaiian shirt in honor of Mark and in keeping with the
nautical theme, the cruise theme.
Nautical theme, yeah.
The ocean.
The ocean. Exactly.
Yes, the ocean.
Okay. Great, Scott. Why don't you let people know, what was your position, or how did, with the Freewinds or whatever, where what was your job? And you were in Scientology then, of course, right?
Yeah. So I got on the ship project in 85, August 85, and got onto the ship project and was sent to Flag in Florida from the Pacific base in California.
Mm-hmm.
And after a short time, they said, "Oh, we need a dissemination secretary, somebody to make the recruitment promo to man up the ship," because that was the purpose of the mission. Basically, was to man up the ship, to get the crew, and to purchase the ship. So I had some experience with that. I was an editor on my high school newspaper, and I was on the yearbook staff. So they were like, "You're it," So,
I was a page editor on my high school newspaper too. That's funny. I didn't know that about you. Yeah.
And I never went to high school.
Yeah. So basically, it was just cranking out recruit promo and sending it to the international addresso, which was the mailing list. And the list that we used was people that had actually done a Scientology service. And, so we figured that they were more likely candidates than just book buyers, for example.
Right.
And, I think it was about 47,000 people. So we were just sending bulk mail promo out to that over and over again. The most effective piece was a survey piece that asked if people had any skills that were applicable to a Scientology organization or maritime skills. And we got incredible responses for that. We had 4-drawer filing cabinets full of those in like 3 different locations. So it was a lot of just following up and, getting the people to arrive, to join the Sea Org, to potentially become crew members on the new ship.
Now, Scott, let's back up just a second. Now, you're obviously were in the Sea Organization then, but where are you from, and how did you get in Scientology and the Sea Org? Briefly, you don't have to go in, the whole story, but just briefly so people know.
Okay. I'm from California. I was born in Pasadena, and I was living up in Northern California, in a town called Fairfield, which is like, it's about halfway between Sacramento and San Francisco. And I got into Scientology up there in a Scientology mission in the city of Davis, California, where University of California, Davis is. And
Martin Samuels.
Right.
Martin Samuels mission, yes.
Yeah. So I only did one course. It's called How to Achieve Effective Communication. And the next thing that I did was I went to an event, which turned out to be a recruit event for the Sea Org, and was recruited into the Sea Organization. And actually at the event, the recruiter mentioned that there were plans to get a ship, so actually, even though I joined an organization that had nothing to do with the ship, but when I got to LA, some people found out that I had some maritime experience because my father owned a commercial diving company, did marine construction diving, and which will, later on you'll see how that's relevant to my time on the ship too.
Yeah, Mark, his dad was one of those guys that would go down in those big space outfits, to go down to the bottom of the ocean with the airlines coming down.
Wow.
Yeah, his dad would do that and go into caves and live down there for a week at a time. I remember that.
They built all kinds of infrastructure up and down the West Coast, mostly like treated wastewater outfalls that go out of the ocean from the sanitation districts, things like that. So just heavy underwater construction in the ocean, So.
And did you work with him when you were a teenager or a young man, or Okay.
Yeah. So my whole life growing up, worked with my dad. Did a lot of mechanical stuff for him. When I was young, he had an auto shop, and he also worked on race cars. He built Indy cars with Dan Gurney, and grew up around mechanical things and cars and engines and stuff.
That's great. Okay, so great. So Janis, do you want to go ahead and tell why it is that we decided all of a sudden to get a ship again after we got rid of the Apollo in the 1970s? Go ahead, Janis.
Well, when it was first decided to get a ship, it wasn't broadcasted as to the reasons or anything like that. And this is things that I kind of put together from my briefings and being an executive at Commodore's Messenger Org or on Watchdog Committee. And my husband, he was the action chief, which meant he ran the various different missions. And with the creation of the International Association of Scientologists, they wanted to set it up somewhere where they didn't have to pay the IRS for any of the money, and because it was donations as well, to keep it offshore from America. And so the plan became, hey, let's buy a ship so it can be offshore. And the Flag Service Org at the time were expecting to get OT-8 so they could deliver it. And instead, that was given as a reason for getting the ship. And the ship was then set up to do OT-8, which became very upsetting for the Flag Service Org that service was being taken away from them. So basically, my understanding was the ship was there initially for the IAS, but it needed a front reason, which is why it was given OT-8. And
what time period are we talking about here, Janis? The 1980s, right?
Yes, we're talking about the mid-80s, 86, 87. And so Paul was working on that, on getting a ship found. There's Paul. So he had to find a ship, and he used Jens Bogvat. And the next slide is of Jens.
You know what? I wrote Jens Erskoff. That's a mistake. It's Jens Bogvad. Sorry about that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
made the slide. I'm sorry about that. Jens Bogvad. Sorry.
Yes, Jens Bogvart. And so Jens worked with Paul. He's the one who found the ship. And then they did the whole purchase and everything. And this took a long time. And once it was purchased, Biddy then came back into the Sea Org, and Biddy became like the ship project in charge and taking over, running a lot of that stuff. Biddy
Miscavige Blythe, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. So Paul was very, very involved. And as I already said, he never got to go to the Freewinds, but he got to send a lot of people to the Freewinds on various different things, including myself. When it was time to do the maiden voyage, I was sent as the mission in charge, and he was my mission ops. And I remember when I came back, everyone was like, how come you weren't romantic or lovey-dovey? And I'm like, because everyone's going to be reading all my telexes.
You mean sending telexes to Paul, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I just kept it strictly business. So, yeah.
Anyway, and that's Paul there. Okay, so that's why they ended up getting the ship. And then you said Jens Bogvart found the ship. Did they do several submissions, or was that the one and only ship that
they went through several different ships, quite a few, and then they finally came up with this one, and that's when it was like, okay, we got it approved all the way up the lines to Miscavige, and Norman Starkey had to also approve it because he was a ship's captain on the Apollo. So, and Miscavige knew nothing about ships. So Norman did. And a lot of the other executives didn't know anything either, which is how I ended up on the maiden voyage, because no one knew ships, but I'd grown up 8 years on the Apollo. So I'm like, okay, I'm one of the major executives, and I also had ship experience. So that's how I got selected.
Right. And the name of it was a cruise ship. That was called the La Boheme. Right, that was what the name of the ship was, right? I'm going to put this picture up here next. Go ahead, Janis.
Yep. Yeah, so that's the ship when she was first purchased, and sitting on the dock there, that's Kenny Lipton. Many people would know his sister, Peggy Lipton from Mod Squad, and she was married to Quincy Jones. His wife was Mickey Lipton, who was actually on the maiden voyage mission with me. Anyway, so Kenny was sent on a project. He was, as far as I remember, he was getting some recruitment going, and then also getting some sales going and donations to help renovate the ship. And then once that was done, and Biddy was on her project, and she was in the Caribbean trying to work out what was our PR problems when we had the Apollo so that we could avoid that with the Freewinds. She did the survey and came up with the name of the Freewinds, and she then took over running everything. And here she is, ready to roll after all the renovations and so forth.
Right. And then now, Scott, you were brought on to the ship, to work on it while, to get it converted over from La Boheme to the Freewinds, right? For the maiden voyage?
Yeah. So from August 85 till December of 86, I was in dissemination and doing the recruiting and everything. And after we bought the ship in September of 86, once I finished up what I was doing with recruitment, and we were also doing extractions, taking people out of existing Sea Org organizations that had valuable post-training skills that we needed to fulfill functions on the ship. After we basically got done with that, then I was sent to the ship, and I became the main engine mechanic on the ship. Do
you remember where you went? Where did you go, and what was it like when you first saw the ship?
Went down to Curacao, and came aboard the ship. And Karry, actually, my wife, came down off of the gangway at the dock and greeted me on the dock as I arrived. Somebody told her, and they had made Karry the crew chief steward at the time. So at 17 years old, Karry was in charge of the berthing, food, and uniforms for all of the people on the ship, which was somewhere around 250 people at the time, the crew, you know.
Were you married by then?
We were married before we went to the ship.
Okay.
So she was 17 when you married her?
Yeah, her mom had to come and sign the papers down at the LA County Courthouse.
Yeah, I was just thinking, wait a minute, I thought they were married before, but she was only 17 when she came down the gangway. So I had to clarify that.
Yeah. So
and she stuck with you.
Yeah. So anyways, I was taken down to the engine room and given a tour. So, you know, they wanted me to be an engine mechanic. So I was shown the generators. You know, the engines were in horrific shape. They were just noisy, vibrating, oil just streaming down the sides of the engine. You know,
I got a couple pictures I forgot to show here. This is Curacao, right? The floating bridge in Curacao.
That's a famous floating bridge in Curacao that traverses the channel entry to the harbor, so people can get from one side to the other.
And what do they do? Just sail it out across and then take it open so the ships can go out?
Those boat-like structures are pontoons, and the whole thing floats, and it just pivots out and goes across the entry to the harbor.
Okay. Yeah. And Curaçao's in the Caribbean, off the coast of Venezuela, right?
Yes. Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. It's 3 islands. Curacao is the home port of the Freewinds, and they're all Dutch protectorates. So, you know, they use guilders and florins, which is the Dutch currency. And, you know, it has that sort of culture and architecture. You know, but at the same time, it's also truly Caribbean, you know.
And then Janis, this was a safe port for the Apollo too, right? When you were on the Apollo with Hubbard?
Yes, it was. We used, that was one of our main ports we used to go to. But that was Curacao, and Aruba and Bonaire, they were called the ABC Islands, and they were part of the Netherland Antilles. And there was one other island further on the eastern side, which was Martinique, I believe, which was also
Martinique, Dutch too. It's in the West Indies.
Yeah, the other half of it, I believe, was part of the French owned one half and the Dutch owned the other half, and it was also part of the Netherland Antilles.
That's actually Saint Martin and Saint Martin.
There it was. Okay.
That's divided. Yeah.
And then let me show you what Karry, your wife, what she bagged. Okay, here it is right here. she wrangled you.
I tricked her. He used to be young and good looking.
Well, they were both a very handsome couple. Very good looking couple.
Absolutely. But Scott's got the Tom Selleck look as I look at this right now, you know.
Mustache, everything.
Yeah.
Ready.
So you arrive on the ship. Here you are again, right? Is this you with some of the ship's crew?
Yeah. So there's Bill Strauss on my left as I'm looking at it, and then Steve Davis, and then me, and then on the far right is Larry Beal. Bill was the mechanics chief, so he was in charge of the machinery unit, which was in charge of all the mechanics. Steve Davis was a watch engineer. He had 3 watches, watch A, B, and C, and they ran the engine room 24 hours a day. So Steve was one of the watch engineers. At that time, I had become the engine technician, so I was in charge of the engine subunit. And the person on the far right, Larry Beal, was the generator mechanic. Okay,
now I have a question for you. Did you have any experience as an engineer, or did any of you, or how did you all learn how to do that? What did you guys? Did Scientology hire people that were experienced at it to teach, or how did that go?
Well, for us, it was basically, you know, hit the ground running. There was a bunch of people that had some type of mechanical acumen, but then there were a few other people that had marine licenses and stuff too.
Yes.
because we had to pass the minimum requirements and have a licensed complement of engineers in order to legally sail.
Uh-huh.
And the ship was under the auspices of the Det Norske Veritas Classification Society, which is the Scandinavian Classification Society, because the ship was built in Finland. So depending on where the ship was built, that would determine which classification society you fell under, and so we had to pass those inspections and everything,
But did you have manuals, or was there somebody who taught you how the equipment worked and all that? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there were everything from the original factory protocols with all of the specifications in them and everything. We had all of that stuff, and we signed up for, the ship was built in 1968. So we signed up for all of the technical bulletin updates from the factories from different manufacturers that had originally provided equipment to the ship and stuff. We actually largely used virtually everything that was installed on the ship and rebuilt it so that it worked properly.
Okay, and then so then, what was that like? I'm not very mechanically inclined, but if I had to go fix my lawnmower, right? That to me would be overwhelming. What was it like having this huge ship engine room, and you are going to be responsible for whatever the equipment is that is in there? What was that like for you?
Well, I'll tell you. So I get this tour of the engine room, and at first we go down and we look at the generators, and it's just horrific, and then we go and we look at the main engines, and it's Wick Alcock, and he tells me, "Oh, good, they're just about to test run the starboard main engine." So he takes me up to the top of the main. That is that's a piston and a cylinder liner from the main engine, to give you an idea of what size those are. And then there's the cylinder head sitting there above the piston. So the cylinder head by itself weighs 1,225 kilos. Right? So it weighs almost 3,000 pounds, right? Just the cylinder.
I was looking for a photograph because you were talking about Wick Alcock. Here we go. So they're right here, right?
So that's there's Wick Alcock right there in the red boiler suit, and there's me in my crazy swim trunks and shirt with the blue stripe on it.
You have a beard there?
I just totally went wild. I had a beard at that time and everything. And so we get this tour, and we go up on top of the main engine. I don't know if you have a picture of one of those shots.
You can tell me when I go. Sorry, when I show it here.
Right there. Okay, so there it is. It looks like that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm Wick and I are standing there. I'm standing next to one of those cylinder heads, and the engineer down below starts the main engine. It starts off, it backfires, and the cylinder that backfired is the one that I was standing right next to.
Oh wow!
And it's like a bomb going off essentially, and flames just blew out sideways from underneath the cylinder head, between it and the cylinder liner, just past my legs and everything. And I turned around and I looked at Wick, and he goes, well, that was a pretty good reaction. But I didn't really react to it,
Yeah.
But so he motions for me to come and go back up to the control room, and he goes, well, what do you want, main engines or generators? And I said main engines, because I wanted to work on those monsters and get them where they ran smoothly, and that was my goal.
Here's a picture. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Janis.
No, I was just going to mention on Wick why he would be training the other engineers. Wick was one of the engineers on the Apollo, and his brother, Richard Alcock, we all called him Whack or El Wacko. He was the chief engineer on the Freewinds.
Exactly. Yeah, Wick
Yeah,
and Whack was Wick. Whack was the chief engineer, and Wick was the deputy chief engineer. And so we had
yeah,
the same,
the brothers.
same combination there.
Yeah, and the other brother, John, who had been an engineer on the ship, he was working at Author Services, so he wasn't used. But
Right.
Whack and Wick, Whack is because when he had a beard and he shaved it off and left a mustache that went like this, so we started calling him El Wacko, and that was then shortened to Whack.
And he kept it the whole time, right? For
He did.
years.
Everyone called him Whack. Some people didn't even know his real name was Richard.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
20 years later. And then and Wick was the youngest brother, and his real name was Warwick. And that's everyone shortened it to Wick. Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
and they were both Kiwis. They're both New Zealanders.
Yes.
And great people. I love both of them. Great people.
So,
well, John and Whack came to the ship when, that must have been 1970 when they arrived on the Apollo. And they were there all the way till, Whack passed away. And I heard John passed away, but Wick's still living in Clearwater, apparently.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had heard about Whack, but not John.
So that's you right down there, right? Working on the engine?
That's me. I'm in the main engine crankcase, and that is a main bearing half shell that we're bringing into the engine. Bringing in or taking out, I'm not sure, but each one of those weighed 90 pounds, just a half shell of a bearing. Like on a car, for example, a half shell of one of those bearings weighs like 5 or 6 ounces maybe. This thing weighed 90 pounds.
Wow. And then I'm just going to show another picture here. There's another weighty thing, right? You told us about this. What are you doing there?
Yeah, that's a crankshaft, about a 2-ton crankshaft for one of the generators that provides electricity for the ship. We had it a really strong and unusual vibration. We had to send it out and get it straightened and rebalanced. So that's me and Bill Strauss, the mechanics chief, loading it back onto the ship after it had been repaired, and then we had to reinstall it.
Wow. So you guys, when you first got there, I take it, Janis and Scott, you didn't, obviously you were doing the work and stuff there at dock. You didn't take it out and test drive it and things like that during that time?
No, we did.
Did you? Oh, you did. Okay.
Each major, repair cycle, we had to take it out and do sea trials to make sure that it was going to withstand the rigors of sailing,
Well, and we also needed to train the deck crew on line handling and the bridge crew on all the equipment up there. And I do want to mention Paul, running the different missions to get the ship set up, also ran a mission to find a captain.
But I was going to ask you that, Janis. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so a mission was
a Scientologist, the captain who was Scientologist too, right?
Exactly. And Mike Napier was found. He was a captain of a ship going in and out of Seattle. And so then a mission was fired to go and get him replaced on that job or whatever he had to do to get him extracted and get him arrived. And he had a wife and he had, I think, 3 kids at the time.
Right.
And so then a nursery needed to be set up, and a mission was then sent to set up a nursery in Curacao so that the captain would have his wife and his kids there in Curacao.
Right.
There was a lot of planning to this whole thing to get all the pieces to fit together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. What was he? Was he a good captain, Scott?
Oh, he was an excellent captain because he had actually captained oil tankers in the North Sea, which if you ask anybody in the industry, that is like the scariest job that a sea captain can do, So, this cat was highly experienced and cool under pressure, which made an ideal captain for somebody in the Sea Org, because as you know, in any post in the Sea Org can be subject to extremely upsetting pressures at any time.
Yeah.
But I would watch him dock that ship, and he was like, he could parallel park that ship like nobody. I mean, it was just so smooth, and then you don't even hit the dock. It was just, he just knew it exactly. And he was just doing all the maneuvering himself. On the Apollo, you had these big telegrams going back and forth, telling the engine room, go forward, go back, stop, where his equipment, he could just do it right there on the bridge, and he would just look down and he just parallel parked that baby.
Right.
Wow.
It was great to watch him.
Well, okay, I'll give you an idea of how cool under pressure he was, right?
Okay.
They had various different problems in the engine room, the previous owners, that wound up making the starboard main engine where it didn't follow the correct load curve proportionate to the variable pitch propeller on the starboard side, right? And then there's an electronic load control that you can plot that curve, right? But that was all screwed up too because of the engine problem. Well, and the captain used to tell me, man, this thing is pretty difficult to maneuver when I'm docking and undocking, because you'd give it some throttle and then wouldn't do anything, and then all of a sudden surge, but he was good at compensating for that because it had a bow thruster and different equipment that you could use to make the ship literally go sideways or turn around within its own length, things like that, but it took me probably a couple of years or so to figure out what was going on, the problems that had happened before. And I finally got them straightened out. And he told me it was a dream to dock and undock the ship after that. He'd never need a tugboat,
Sorry.
But, so the fact that he could do that with the engines and propeller system being so messed up, is a testament to how good he was at that type of thing. And it's the reason that he's still there today, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Is Bob DeSimone still there? That was his deputy captain.
Who?
Bob DeSimone. Is he still there?
No, Bob left, I think, in 91 or 92, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were getting ready for the main voyage. Bob was
the license captain too. He was.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, sailing as an executive officer prior to us getting. I actually went up and got him out of his house in Arlington, Virginia, and got him to arrive to the Sea Org at Flag. So that was an adventure in itself.
That's when he was married to Kathy Fraser.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Kathy Fraser.
Kathy DeSimone.
Yeah, she went into the IS. At the time when we got him, Kathy was actually out working on the Wallersheim trial.
Oh, okay.
She wasn't there at the beginning, But after that,
I only knew her on the ship when she was doing the public relations for the Freewinds, and was married to DeSimone, who was the deputy captain.
Right.
Yeah, and then I heard she'd married Jeff Hawkins later on, and she was the lady at the gate at the Gold Base when people showed up to try Yeah, that was Kathy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, so Scott, let me ask you, so when you got there, you guys you do these sea trials and all that stuff, right? And to get it all, how long did it take from the time you all got there before the main voyage? Like, what was the time frame to get the thing ready and operational?
Right. I got there in December '86, which was a couple of months after, well, we bought it in September '86. So a couple of months after it got down there. And it took us from that time till June '88 to get everything ready to have the maiden voyage. And Janis put together the actual organizations, the Freewinds Ship organization and the Flagship Service organization, to be able to deliver OT8 and the OT hatting courses, and to sail the ship from place to place.
Yeah, Biddy did all the groundwork for it, and then Paul fired me on the mission to go and implement it all as the mission in charge. I had probably 12 missionaries underneath me just doing various things in order to make sure we were ready to receive passengers and sail, for the maiden voyage. And what was amazing, everything went so smooth. The crew were fantastic. I never raised my voice once. I just comment something to the captain and bang, it was done.
Right.
There I am as the mission in charge for the maiden voyage.
So Janis, I want to ask you this, okay? It sounds like a huge operation. Like, we have casinos here in Las Vegas, right? And they got to build them and train the staff and, get the rooms ready and all that sort of stuff. So you basically were overseeing a hotel on the ocean, right? And that, that operational, and you had to get everything working together so that the maiden voyage would come off flawlessly. Is that right?
Yeah, totally correct.
It's a lot more pressure than, doing, individual jobs that we do now or anything like that, right? Wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And in a Sea Org environment, that's even more pressure,
That's amazing. It really is amazing.
And you had to make sure everything was set up for the passengers, for the crew, and for the executives coming to do the final inspection, and it was a lot of pressure, but we got it done. And the crew, as I said, fantastic crew. That every one of them were, yes, sir, and they were onto it.
And I want to comment here, just, this is something that they pushed in Scientology and the Sea Organization, whether or not you believe in Scientology, the Sea Organization, whatever, right? But Hubbard pushed in the Sea Org, make it go right, that you are responsible for taking on these duties and you have to make it go right, right, Scott? You had to make it go right in the engine room. Janis, you had to make it go right, coordinating everything, right, so that it would happen, right? And you had no experience doing this, but you were given those responsibilities, correct?
Yes, absolutely. It was made clear to us right from the very beginning that, a cruise ship, a passenger vessel, it's not only is it providing all the services of a luxury hotel, but it's like a small city. It provides sewer, water, power, everything that a small city provides. And at the same time, it has to maintain this sailing schedule. The sailing schedule is like the Bible, is held inviolate, because there are people that are beginning their cruise or ending their cruise at almost every port. They're flying in or out. You cannot miss a sailing schedule. You can't have lost time accidents or things like that where it would prevent you from being at that port on time, And somehow, it all came together and we came up to that standard. Not only that, I mean, I was there from before we bought the ship till late '93, and we maintained that standard the entire time, And it wasn't a piece of cake, but I was actually proud of it. It was a huge adventure. It was like a big adventure for me,
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing I just remembered as well in this organization, they would call it raising your necessity level. In other
Right.
words,
Oh yeah,
you tomorrow we're
that's right.
sailing. That means raise your necessity level. Whatever problems you're having, we're sailing tomorrow. You handle it, right?
Hey,
Yeah,
you saw the picture of the cylinder head and the piston and the cylinder liner laying there. There
Yeah.
were times when, because you can't just like magically overhaul everything when you snap your fingers, and then it's ready to go. It's a process of years, And
Yeah.
and so what you do is you take the worst thing and you fix that first, and then you work from there, But there were times when the captain was literally standing there looking at his watch, when we're putting that stuff back together, because we got a sail in half an hour, And
I know, it's amazing.
somehow we would
yeah,
do it,
yeah.
Hey, Janis and Scott, can you compare the size of the Freewinds and the number of crew to Janis? You've been on cruises recently in Europe and like, in the Caribbean and stuff. What's the difference in the amount of crew that are on like the cruise ships in the Caribbean or whatever versus the Freewinds?
Well, the Freewinds was big in her day. I mean, especially compared to the Apollo. The Apollo was like 360 feet long. And Scott, how long's the Freewinds? Do you
about
remember?
450 feet long.
Yeah, so it was bigger. But
It was about the size of the Love Boat, the Pacific Princess, very, very similar to that.
okay,
And then
but the
how many
cruise
staff?
ships today, Mark,
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
don't remember.
I mean,
I
nowadays,
don't remember.
the Freewinds could hold at one time about 450, but I think since all the cabin renovations and everything, now it's about 350 passengers, and more crew than it was designed to hold, So I
Yeah.
think about that many crew as well at one time. I'm not sure nowadays.
Right. Well, on the Apollo, when it got overflowed with people, there weren't enough beds. There were people rotating in beds, or they were like, "Oh, I can't stand living in that stuffy dorm," so they'd go find a lifeboat and sleep in the lifeboat.
Right.
But I was gonna say the Freewinds is very small compared to today's cruise liners, which are like four, 6 times bigger than the Freewinds.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now they have ones that have 5,000 people on them.
Scott, describe what that's a person under there, right? In the blue?
Yeah. That's one of the oilers. I don't know what he was doing. He was probably picking something up off of the floor pan of the crankcase. That's the main engine crankcase.
Wow.
So you can see how huge that stuff was, Everything weighed hundreds or thousands of pounds, So
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I have a couple of the photos here I want to show, and we may have been out of order a little bit here, but I just wanted to let Scott talk about them. Hold on, here we go, right here. Is this earlier on, right? Is this when you're?
Yeah, this is the. So we had a recruit office out in PAC at the Pacific Area Command Base, which is up in Hollywood, California, and. That was just a makeshift poster that we threw together. And so I was recruiting out there, and they had sent some other people out. The person to my left is a guy named Sildam Gandhi. The one on the other side of the recruitment poster is a person named Rod McKnocker, who went on to become the first engineer on the Freewinds. He had a Marine license. He was a South African guy. And then that other person next to him was a person named Don Blackwell, who was the expediter and body router for the recruit office. I had gotten sent out there from Flag during the Wallersheim trial because that was a time when Scientologists from all over the world were there in Los Angeles, picketing around the courthouse and stuff, and it was considered to be, an excellent opportunity to recruit people in the Sea Org. And we actually did recruit a lot of people into the Sea Org.
That's Kenny. Yep. Here you are. That's also recruiting, right? That's you.
That's me blowing a raspberry at whoever was taking the picture.
Probably Karry.
And I thought maybe your stats were down. And it's Thursday at 2:01, and your stats are down.
So that's Bob DeSimone in the background. And they sent him out there to recruit for a while too.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so go ahead, Janis.
Yeah, I just want to mention that this is like part one of a series. We're going to do some more on the Freewinds. You know, we'll cover the maiden voyage, and we'll cover the years later as well. Because I did two trips to the Freewinds.
Yeah, very cool.
How long were you there, Bob? Or Scott? Sorry, I said Bob. Bob C. Simone. Sorry, Scott. How long were you there on the ship?
I was on the ship from December '86 till I think when was it? Maybe September or October of '93.
Okay, so about 7 years.
Yeah.
And then what happened after that? Did you leave Scientology then, or the Sea Organization, or what happened?
We left Scientology after that point. That was the reason why I'm not sure of the month that we left is because it was kind of a rough exit, which we can.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to get into that in another one. We'll get into Scott's exit. That's a whole story in itself.
Well, let me ask you a couple. We have a few more minutes. I want to ask you a couple more questions. What was it like living on the ship and actually being in Curacao as your main port or whatever? What was your schedule like as a crew member?
It was good. I mean, even as something like the main engine mechanic, which would be, an ordinary post. I wasn't an officer yet. Eventually I became an officer. I got on the executive council of the Freewinds Ship organization, stuff like that. But even as an ordinary staff member, it was a lot of work, but it was fun too. We got time off. That became progressively less and less over time. But, the policy that applied was an L. Ron Hubbard flag order called loafing time, where it was if you got the production of your post done, you bought yourself some loafing time.
Yeah, so you take your feet up on your desk.
You could get liberty and go ashore, go shopping, go to the beach, and do whatever you want, So we had that, and it was great. It was very high production, but very high morale scene as well. And one thing I think that might have differentiated it from a lot of the other Sea Org organizations was the food. The food was good, even the ordinary food that the crew got at first. It was good, high quality food. And then at some point, the hotel manager looked at the budget and he figured out we can actually save money by serving the crew the same main menu items that the passengers got. Wow. We didn't have the crazy midnight buffet and the crazy dessert selection and stuff like the passengers got, but it was high quality food. So that's an issue.
So you guys had your own dining room, obviously, and was it their own galley for the staff, and how did that all work out?
Yeah, we had.
What were living conditions for you? Janis mentioned people sleeping in the lifeboats on the Apollo. Any lifeboat sleepers on the Freewinds?
No, they didn't really have that. So I was married, so we had what they called a 2D cabin for married couples. So it was just Karry and I. And then unmarried people might sleep in a dormitory cabin where there were several beds, bunk beds, but it wasn't a huge amount of that. They were actual built-in bunk beds to the cabins that were just like they were with the the previous company that owned the ship. So there might be 3 people in a cabin, or maybe 4 if it was a bigger one. And they had, communal showers and bathrooms and stuff,
Yeah, I would imagine those bunks had to be secured, because if you're at sea, you don't want the bunks rolling around and all that, right? In other words, they're
everything
like attached to the ship.
Everything
is secured.
And then how about, did they have like, for the crew, did they have like a lounge area, or like a place where you could actually, because the cabin's so small? Or
I had a crew lounge, and it had a big widescreen TV. It was back when they had projection TVs and stuff.
Yeah.
And you could go in there on time off and watch videos and stuff. They would get the latest videos. They had a video library. Whenever they came out, half of them I think were pirated, because it was down in the Caribbean. They didn't have copyright enforcement down there and stuff. So you could go to a video store and just buy whatever the latest movies that were in theaters back in the States, So
how about for the crew? Did you guys get paid okay? I mean, or was there like half?
Paid okay.
You know how people lose their pay, and weren't being paid for different things.
Yeah, at first it was 20 something per week, and then it went up to $30 per week, and then not long. Yeah, I mean, you could buy whatever essentials and toiletries and some snacks or something, things like that. Wasn't a huge.
But you didn't. There was no rent to pay or food to pay for, or anything like that. That was all covered. So it was more of toiletries.
Yeah.
How about crew laundry? Did you guys have to do your own uniforms, or did they have laundry staff to do that?
We had facilities to do our own laundry, and then if you're an officer, you could have the staff laundry workers do your clothes. I don't know if I ever did that, but so they had laundry facilities everywhere on the ship, down below.
Yeah.
Let me ask you another question, Janis. Go ahead, Janis.
There was also like a crew course room, and there was crew auditors. So the crew was still studying Scientology or studying their sea basics and doing their able-bodied seaman checklist and that type of thing in a course room with supervision and being audited.
As a matter of fact, at some point we implemented training courses that you could train up to and pass all of the licensing examinations all the way up to captain or chief engineer. And so, at some point, this was after we left, they had multiple captains and chief engineers licensed, And the ship was registered in Panama, but the Panamanian licensing exams were the same as the United States licensing exams.
That's great. And then I take it no RPF on the ship, right? Because if there was somebody going to the RPF, they didn't want the public to see him. They'd probably send him to Florida or to Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, they didn't have an RPF, but they did have the interim bilges.
Yeah, I was going to ask that too. That was something famous. Miscavige would send people to the bilges. Can you explain what that was and what that meant?
So the bilges at the very bottom of the ship, where the the whole bottom of a ship, especially a cruise ship, is tank tops, because they're fuel tanks, water tanks, oil tanks that are underneath the deck plates on the lowest deck, right? Well, in an engine room, you have all kinds of machinery, and over the months and years, anything that drips off of the machinery accumulates in the bilge. And there's, tiny leaks from different fittings and stuff like that. So it's basically oil and dirt and sludge and seawater mixed together. And it's all rancid. So it's a very unpleasant environment. Go ahead, Jenna.
Mark, I suggest we cover who visited the bilges in a later episode when we get to that kind of time period.
Okay, that's fine. I just was interested in that. We can definitely do that.
Yeah.
And it's hot down there too, right? Is your engine room hot as
Oh,
well?
Yeah, it was
Like,
super hot.
it wasn't air conditioned in the engine room,
No.
right? You guys would be hot.
No.
To say the coolest space in the engine room was the main engine room on the lowest level had giant fans, were like 6-foot diameter fans up on the upper deck that blew outside air, not air conditioned air, just fresh air from outside down in there. And that it had a thermometer hanging right in the middle between the two engines, and that thing was between 120 and 130 degrees all the time.
Because you got to remember, you're in the Caribbean. It's very humid and hot.
Yeah.
So that's humid air being blown in there to cool the engines down.
So it was essentially, like you took a shower in your clothes most of the time.
Oh my God! How about did you have air conditioning in your cabins for the crew and everything?
Yeah, the ship had central air conditioning that went to all of the cabins, so that was a pretty pleasant environment, inside the ship.
And Janis, I take it the Apollo did not have air conditioning.
We had blowers.
So if it was humid outside, it was hot inside the ship, right?
Well, no, the engine room would cool the air down with salt water. The cool air would be cooled. I mean, the air would be cooled by salt water pipes going through, and then you could also heat up the air coming out. If it got cold, you could heat it up through the boiler, by going through the boiler area. So there were ways to cool things off, but not like air conditioning. I mean, I never even had air conditioning or had experienced it until I guess it was 1974. I went to New York on a mission, and it was like, what is this? I had no idea what air conditioning was.
That's funny.
Oh, I couldn't live without it. Okay, well, anyway, we're at the end of this part. Scott, we're going to have Janis. We're going to have him on for some other videos too, right? Why don't you go ahead and describe what we're going to do?
Yes, we are. But first, I want to compliment Scott for his boomerang. I appreciate that.
No, absolutely.
It's behind him on the wall if you didn't notice it. But there it is. Yeah.
Yep, my grandfather gave that to me back in the 60s.
Wow.
I enjoy boomerangs. They remind me of Australia. So we're going to have Scott back. We're going to do a whole series here on the Freewinds, and we'll go through time, and we'll talk about different things. And we've got some photographs that we will show. And so just stick with us as we release more about the Freewinds.
Exactly. And then if you have any questions about what we discussed or about the Freewinds or anything about that, just ask in the comment section down below. We check them all the time. So anyway, you're welcome to do that. We also, if you've enjoyed this, we'd like you to ask to please subscribe to our channel, our Scientology Stories Peeling the Onions. We appreciate the support. And we're going to continue to put out videos like this about the history of Scientology and the Sea Organization, about the abuses that occur under L. Ron Hubbard, as well as David Miscavige and others. We're going to talk about disconnection and all that, and the people's stories regarding that. And that's what our mission is in terms of what we're doing on our channel. So anyway, if you're interested in that type of thing, please subscribe to our channel. We would really appreciate it. Anyway,
and rock slam the like.
I was going to say that you can rock slam the likes. That really helps us get the the YouTube analog, whatever algorithm, not analog algorithm to push it out there for you. If you'd like to buy us a coffee, you can do that as well. Just go into the description. There's a link down there, and we appreciate any support from that too. Scott, is there anything else you want to say before we end off this first video to the public out there?
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you guys for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Scott, hang on. Don't hang up or anything like that. But we just want to say thank you to everybody for watching. Janis, have you got anything else?
Just have a good day, and we will see you later on. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Bye-bye. See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.